We were standing in the transit hall of Outpost L-17, a place that smelled of ionized metal and recycled air, where humans and non-humans passed each other without eye contact. I'd been stationed there for 6 months as a xenolinguistics technician, translating minor trade dialects for ships that passed through the border systems. She was new, tall, wrapped in a layered cloak that shimmered faintly like liquid glass, her posture rigid, trained, disciplined. Her hood obscured her face completely, as was customary for some off-world species. Still, something about her presence pulled my attention. Not beauty, exactly. Authority. Gravity. We ended up waiting side by side for the same shuttle. "You move like someone who's seen real stars," I said, half joking, half nervous. "Not the tourist kind." She turned slightly toward me. For a moment, there was silence. Then she laughed. It wasn't cruel, but it wasn't kind either. A sharp, surprised sound, like I'd said something impossibly naive. "Is that how humans flirt?" she asked. Heat rushed to my face. "Sorry. I didn't mean." "It's fine," she interrupted. "Just unexpected." The shuttle arrived before I could embarrass myself further. She stepped inside without another word, and I assumed that was the end of it. I was wrong. The woman behind the veil. 2 days later, I was summoned to the diplomatic wing, an area far above my clearance level. Armed guards escorted me through pressure-sealed corridors until we reached a chamber of black crystal and hovering hollow sigils. She stood at the center. Same cloak. Same presence. "Do you know who I am?" she asked. "No," I answered honestly. "My name is Veilira Threx," she said. "High strategist of the Caraxi Dominion." My stomach dropped. The Caraxi were not traitors. They were conquerors. Ancient. Ruthless. A species whose wars rewrote star maps. And Veilira Threx was one of the most feared minds in the galaxy, a being rumored to have orchestrated planetary collapses with nothing but probability models. "I laughed at your compliment," she continued, "because no one has spoken to me without fear in over a century." I swallowed. "I didn't know." "That," she said calmly, "is why you're still alive." She explained that negotiations were failing. The Dominion and the human coalition stood on the edge of war, one that humanity would not survive. The Caraxi leadership wanted insight into human behavior, emotion, irrationality. They wanted someone who spoke without calculation. They wanted me. Against every instinct, I agreed. Learning the enemy. Over the following weeks, I met with Veilira daily. We talked about everything except politics. She asked about Earth's skies, about music, about why humans created stories where hope survived impossible odds. In return, she spoke of Caraxi society, of logic taken to its extreme, of faces hidden not out of shame, but necessity. "Our true appearance triggers fear responses in most species," she said once. "Evolutionary revulsion. It simplifies conquest." I tried not to imagine it. Despite myself, I grew comfortable around her. She corrected my grammar with dry amusement. She teased my optimism. Sometimes she laughed, genuinely. One night, after a particularly long discussion, I said something stupid again. "You know," I said, "for someone trained to terrify entire civilizations, you have a nice voice." She paused. Then she laughed, softly this time. "Would you still think so," she asked, "if you saw my face?" I hesitated. "I think I'd like to know the truth." Her laughter faded. "Then you are more dangerous than any weapon your species has built," she said. The war begins. Negotiations collapsed 3 days later. A Caraxi fleet entered coalition space without warning. Colonies burned. Defense lines fell in hours. Panic spread faster than the invasion. I was evacuated, but Veilira stayed behind. When I demanded answers, she met me one last time. Guards tense, alarms echoing through the station. I failed, she admitted. The Dominion believes humans are too emotional to be allowed to exist. And you? I asked. Her silence was answer enough. I convinced them to delay total eradication, she said. In exchange, I offered them proof. Proof of what? That humans can choose compassion over fear, she said quietly. Before I could ask more, she dismissed the guards and reached for her hood. The reveal. The room seemed to dim as she pulled it back. Her face was not monstrous. It was alien in a way no translation prepared me for. Smooth, obsidian skin patterned with faint bioluminescent veins. For eyes, not aligned for symmetry, each reflecting light at different angles. Her mouth was delicate, almost human, but framed by subtle ridges that marked her species' emotional states. I felt the instinctual shock she'd warned me about. My breath caught. My pulse spiked. But the fear passed. Because behind those eyes was the same intelligence, the same humor, the same loneliness. You're still standing, she said softly. You're still you, I replied. Something in her expression changed, an emotion Caraxi rarely allowed themselves. Hope. The choice. The Dominion had been watching. My reaction was broadcast to their council in real time. Veolira explained later that Caraxi philosophy believed fear was immutable, that all species would inevitably recoil from their true form. That revulsion justified extermination. I had disproven that assumption, but it wasn't enough. They will still destroy Earth, she said, unless I do what they cannot predict. What's that? She looked at me, not as a strategist, but as a person. Betray them. The ending, a face the galaxy remembered. Veolira Threx returned to her fleet alone. Hours later, the Caraxi Armada went dark. Every ship shut down simultaneously, their command cores locked in recursive logic loops only she could create. She had sacrificed her authority, her status, and her future to save a species she was supposed to erase. The war ended before it truly began. She was declared a traitor, exiled beyond known space. I never saw her again, until years later. I was older then, standing beneath an open sky on Earth, a real one, not a simulated dome, when my comm device activated with an unregistered signal. A single image appeared. Veolira, unhood, standing on an unfamiliar world beneath unfamiliar stars. Her message was short. You once spoke to me without fear. So I showed the galaxy my face. History would remember the war as a miracle, a sudden peace, an unexplained retreat. But I would remember it differently. As the moment a laugh, a compliment, and the courage to look past fear changed the fate of two civilizations forever. The sky above the ruined city finally cleared, the storm clouds peeling back like a curtain after a long, brutal performance. Ships hovered in silence, where moments ago the war had screamed itself hoarse. I stood at the edge of the platform, the hum of alien engines vibrating through my bones, and watched her remove the mask she had worn since the beginning of the war. Not armor, a lie. Her true face was not monstrous, not divine, but tired and painfully human in its sorrow. You were never meant to survive, she said quietly. But you changed the equation. Around us, soldiers from both sides lowered their weapons. The neural beacons went dark. The invasion algorithms, centuries old, unquestioned, collapsed in on themselves as her command echoed through every occupied system. A single decision, born not of conquest, but of understanding, rewrote the fate of two civilizations. History would later call it a ceasefire. I knew better. It was a rebellion against inevitability. As the first human evacuation ships rose into the light, She stepped back into the shadows of her people, a ruler choosing exile over dominion. Our eyes met one last time. No promises. No grand speeches. Just the shared knowledge that the universe had bent, ever so slightly, because someone dared to see an enemy as more than a target. The war ended that day, but something far greater began. And somewhere among the stars, a future was no longer written in blood, but in choice.